2K nerds, what's up? Team review, Milwaukee Bucks. Let's go. Right now it is January 10th. The Bucks have a 6-4 record. They are essentially the best team in the East, although the standings don't exactly reflect it. Right now, record isn't really a good predictor of team quality at the moment. It's like teams are getting blown out by 30, 20, like more than ever so far. And they've been pretty up and down. Obviously, teams are missing players due to like COVID, stuff like that. But the raw stuff for the Bucks is all off the charts. Simple rating system. It's a stat on Basketball Reference that measures point differential against team quality. Currently, the Bucks lead the NBA in that with 9.37, meaning they will beat the average team by about 9 points. Pace. Their current pace is 103 possessions a game, which is 6th in the NBA. Last year, they led the league in pace at about 106 possessions. So I think that's a little bit of a drop-off from Eric Bledsoe's high-tempo pace to Drew Holiday being more of a half-court player. Offensive rating, the Bucks are currently first in the NBA at 118.6 points per 100 possessions. That would, if the season ended today, obviously there's still 60-something games left. If the season ended today, that would be the best mark in NBA history, beating what the Dallas Mavericks did last year, which was about 115, if I'm not mistaken. Defensively, the Bucks last year ranked number 1. This year they are down to 12th, although that's been steadily improving. We'll see, we'll see where they look in a couple months at the end of the year. But overall, pretty solid results, and the fact that they have the number 1 offense compared to last season, they were number 8. I think that's just an overall reflection of Drew Holiday replacing Eric Bledsoe on the roster, as Bledsoe wasn't really an ideal fit with a player like Giannis. So we're going to look over this is the 2K official roster. We're going to look at the ratings a little bit and then touch on the badges, and then we're going to jump over to my roster. So first, let's just start off with Giannis. Or I'm sorry, you know what? Sorry. Let's really quick just go over the positions and scan the entire team right now before I jump into the ratings. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So Giannis, I would recommend taking away his second position, which is currently center, and just having him rock with no second position based on how the season's going for them. I'll get into, I guess, the reasons why a little later. But aside from that, Torrey Craig, I would recommend as a shooting guard. And if you use Basketball Reference to determine your player positions, they have the way that the algorithm for player positions on Basketball Reference works is if you have the point guard tag, you're automatically at a point guard, and if you don't, then they sort you by player height, essentially. So Bryn Forbes, he doesn't have the point guard tag. When he shares the court with Dante Di Vincenzo, who's taller, Forbes will be classified as a point guard in their data, but Di Vincenzo's actually the primary ball handler and stuff in those lineups. So that's one way to, if you look at that data for your positions in the 2K roster, you need to take that into account and go like an extra step. That data was effective 5 years ago, but NBA teams have kind of changed how they slot players positionally. It's not just by like height or anything anymore. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think everything else is good. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with Giannis real quick. So he's a 97 overall. This rating is ridiculous in a bad way. He should be a 99 without question. He had the highest PER, player efficiency rating, in NBA history last year. He was the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah, he was MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. Very few people in history have done that. Notably, one of them is on the list. I'm going to file off. But PER is just stats. That's basically what the overall rating is in 2K. Half of the ratings in this game are tied to statistics in some way. So, in most cases, a player's PER should be pretty reflective of what their overall rating is. Like the only attributes that it wouldn't really affect would be stuff like on-ball defense and interior defense, all that stuff. Like everything else, pretty much tied to just like raw stats. And he had the best raw stats in NBA history. The top 5 PER ratings in NBA history. Number 2 and 3, Wilt Chamberlain in 1962 and 63. That's the year he averaged 50 points and 26 rebounds. So Giannis had a better year than that. And number 4 is Michael Jordan in 1988, which is the year that he won Defensive Player of the Year also, and averaged 35 points on 54% shooting. And then number 5 was LeBron in 2009. So Giannis had the best statistic. Like his season trumps like some of the all-time greatest years statistically, but he that's not a max rating. Get the F out of here. Like, so I had to look through and kind of figure out why isn't that the case. So obviously the first place we go to is the Intangibles rating. And he's very clearly not maxed out here. I don't know. So this is a conscious decision by 2K to not max him out. I don't get it. What are you guys like paying attention to? You know, because very clearly, in terms of like overall value that one player's ever had to a team, he's basically he's it. He's, if you don't want to put him on Michael Jordan's level, fine. He's as valuable as freaking Wilt Chamberlain. You know what? Like at power forward, no power forward's ever been more valuable in history. He's the best big man, basically, aside from Wilt Chamberlain, to ever play. Like, I don't know. And then let's just look at the Intangibles rating from top to bottom, because I don't understand. We're going to check out the Intangibles rating for the players in my roster real quick also. But you can see they're kind of all over the place. And this is all because like the overall rating is sometimes not effective at representing the player, and they need to get a little bit of a boost based on like their archetype. Like, for example, like Brook Lopez needs a high Intangibles because he's a bad rebounder, and the overall rating looks heavily at the rebound rating. So he's a player that you need to give a high Intangibles rating to, or else he's not going to have his value reflected, right? But then like some of these I don't know. I'm gonna get to it later. You can see that they're just kind of all over the map, and when we do it in my roster, I'm able to get the overall ratings all at a reasonable spot by just like sticking to one system. And a lot of the time, like here, they're using this 98 Intangibles on Giannis's brother. That's so they don't even have to do the work of figuring out what he's good at. If you took that Intangibles away from him and put him at like Giannis's level of 60, he'd rate like 67 overall. He'd be the worst guy on the team, which is funny because he's at Giannis's actual backup right now. He's playing, like, he's getting minutes in the rotation. And rather than figure out and evaluate him, they just like threw this Band-Aid on. Like, if we just look at Giannis's brother's ratings real quick. Well, for example, he's 6'6", 216 pounds, but yeah, sure, 42 strength. That makes a ton of sense, right? Like, just looking at some of the other strength ratings. Yeah, not great. 40 defensive consistency. He probably wouldn't be getting minutes at the 4 if he was a bad defensive player. Ditto for like pass perception. This is ridiculously low. He's not going to function defensively. 44 help defense. Again, he would not be playing if he was a bad defensive player. Like, he's a bad offensive player, so he's got to be good at something, right? And rather than them, you know, like, I'm not saying that the Thanasis is good, but if you just like fixed like those 3 areas, you wouldn't need to throw this freaking Band-Aid on. So, okay. And then right before we jump over to my roster, because I don't want to pick too much at like we'll be here all day if we start nitpicking like various attributes and whatnot. But I just wanted to address Giannis's 82 mid-range rating, as this was like a point of contention by like window lickers on Reddit, specifically window lickers on Reddit. Yeah, they used his mid-range rating as a tool to compare like Jimmy Butler's mid-range rating. Giannis, last year he shot 27 to 65, which was 41% from the field, and he was assisted on only 41% of those. So he was creating his shot on those shots. And the year before that, he was 36 of 89, also 40%, assisted 33% of the time. So over the last 2 years, 63 of 154. Again, he's only assisted 40% of the time. Drew Holiday, by comparison, last year, for example, was 9 of 36 for 25%. So, like, Giannis, pretty clearly, like, the second best mid-range scorer on the team after Middleton. And when we talk about, like, Giannis as, like, he's a bad shooter, mid-range isn't really his issue. It's more that he takes 5 threes a game, but he isn't a consistent three-point shooter. So that's why defenses are able to play off him. Like, if he, like runners and like post fadeaways is probably his most frequent mid-range shot. Like, he's fine. That's not his issue. So I just wanted to address that because there were just a ton of posts and like people have been talking about it for like X amount of time. Is like, oh, 2K doesn't know what they're doing. No, they know what they're doing. Like, when I call somebody a window licker, it essentially means like, imagine the people who wait online at Black Friday with their faces pressed up against the window like they're in the freaking Walking Dead. People who don't use any sort of critical thinking to address a situation. Like, all you have to do is just look that up. It would take 2 seconds, but instead people run to the internet to complain, and essentially it spreads misinformation about the perception of like what actually needs work in the game. So I just wanted to address that. Plenty wrong with the 2K rosters, but that specific attribute is not one of them. So I'm gonna head over to my roster just to finish off talking about all the players. But that's Giannis so far. Let's actually just review everybody's. I'm going to talk about their stats, what they're doing this year, and how they've improved or regressed since. So I have Giannis +2 at a 99. This year he's averaging 27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. His production is slightly down from last year, but for the most part, I haven't penalized him too hard. I did drop his pass ratings just a little bit, as Chris Middleton's actually the primary playmaker on the team at the moment. He's the one who's leading the team in assists. But do I have any more Giannis notes? No, not really. He's still the same guy as like he's ever been. He is getting a little bit older. His dunk rate is declining somewhat. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But oh, you know what? I'll showcase his badges. I didn't do a ton of badge changes with this team, but one thing I took away was Lob City Finisher, as Giannis, because he actually, like, I think the perception of Giannis, and this kind of like goes into him being broken as a video game character in this game. The perception is that he's like Blake Griffin out there, and 2 years ago he had a year like that, but as he's bulked up, he's I guess lost some of his explosive lead. It's like a combination of him just getting older. He's on the other side of 25 now, and your most athletic years are going to be on the, when you're younger than 25. Because he has the ball in his hands so much, he actually isn't very much of a lob threat. Like, the Bucks, out of all the teams in the league, probably have the least amount of alleys compared to the Spurs. So that's just something I wanted to touch on with Giannis. But let's head over to Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton's having a career year. following up last year's career year. He's averaging 23 points, shooting a ridiculous 56% from the field and 51% on three, and 97% from the line. Wild. Like, his efficiency was already nuts, and that's even better. Like, I have him basically on par with Jason Tatum. Um, I think Tatum's eventually going to surpass Middleton, given like he's 7 years younger. So Middleton was a little bit of a late bloomer, but I think he's probably the best small forward in Bucks history, and they've had a lot of good small forwards. Uh, he's averaging 23 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. The assists are a career high. Last year he was only averaging 4. He's leading the team in assist rate, um, which you wouldn't think would be the case since they added Drew Holiday. But I did boost his pass rating. Like, I boosted his pass rating 5 points. I decreased Giannis's by 5 points, and I think I decreased Drew by like 3 points. So technically, because Middleton has the highest pass rating on the team, like, if I'm assuming that Giannis will, probably bounce back a little bit with his pass rating and like maintain this, but otherwise you could probably invert these two. But checking out Drew Holiday, he absorbed Eric Bledsoe's role, but he's better suited for it, and he's a big reason why the Bucks are the #1 offensive team, because he's a better catch and shoot player than Eric Bledsoe, which is what they need when, again, his assist rate is down. He's playing off of Giannis and Middleton, So basically, most guys on the team, with the exception of like Giannis, had their 3-point rating go up a little bit. Drew is averaging 15 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 49% from the field, 40% from three, 82% from the line. Last year, he shot 46% from the field and 35% from three, and only 71% from the line. Wow. So last year was a career worst from the line. So let's actually boost that up. Did that just raise his rating? All right, cool. Yeah, all right. So he's up to an 88. 2K has him at 85. Middleton's, Middleton I have like as a +4 compared to 2K. I feel like a lot of their guys in the 80s, like they'll have players in like the upper 90s, and then there's like a 10-point gap between the tertiary all-stars, and I just don't think that there needs to be such a substantial gap in terms of like their player value and stuff. Brook Lopez, 2K dropped his rating by a point in their most recent roster update, but he's actually having a better year than last year. This year he's only averaging 10 points and 4 rebounds, but he's shooting better from three, which is the key stat for him. Last year, Splash Mountain, he was down to like 33% from three, and this year he's back up to 36%. So that's really all they want from him, is just he's the 5-man that stretches the floor for Giannis and allows them to play that kind of offensive system. Dante Di Vincenzo, I feel like the Bucks dodged a bullet by missing out on Bogi Bogdanovic. Because Di Vincenzo's basically just as good, but like 5 years younger, give or take. So he's averaging 11 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, shooting 46% from the field, 47% on three. He realistically should have been starting over Wes Matthews last year, so he's starting this year and not disappointing in that role. Bobby Portis is having a bounce back year. He was awful with the Knicks last year. Basically, he's back to his 2019 self. He was awful under David Fizdale, and there's definitely a lot of players that you can say that about David Fizdale. I don't think Fiz is a very good coach at all, based on what we saw from him in his 2 years in the NBA with the Knicks and the Grizz. But yeah, his production's back to being more in line with what he did in Chicago, which is how he earned a $15 million a year contract in the first place. So pretty good deal at only $3.6 million this year. With the Bucks, he's a hybrid essentially of Ersan Ilyasova and Robin Lopez. which that allows him to fill both of those roles and allows him to get a decent chunk of playing time. He's playing like 24 minutes a game. Both those guys were, I think, like 16 for Ilyasova and a little less than that for Lopez, maybe 12. So he's improved his interior scoring. It was down last year with the Knicks, and the Knicks like they used him more as like a shooter, and he's back to being more of a post scorer. Like he comes in when Giannis is out of the game, so they do feature him a little bit inside. Um, so he's actually his three attempts are down, but he's actually like more efficient on them. And it's worth noting that the I gave him corner specialist because the Bucks basically use their centers in the corner a lot. Portis is shooting 45% of his threes come from the corner. So, and the corner is an easier three-point shot than the ones at the top of the arc. So that might play a factor in his rating trickling up a little bit. Let's look at Pat Connaughton. Oh, and just real quick, his rebound rates are also up because he's playing center. But let's go over to Pat Connaughton. 2K's got him low at like a 75. I've got him at a 78. His archetype for me is 3-and-D wing, whereas they have inside-out score, which basically means like the places he's underrated are in the defensive department. Essentially, he's not a very good defender in the official roster. I think I threw a couple extra badges on him too. He's a pretty good athlete. So deceptively, it just plays well defensively. I've got him at the 3 rather than they might have him at the 2 or the 3, but he's 6'5", 210. He's got 2 guard size, but he isn't really much of a ball handler at all. Just like a corner shooter. But every now and then he's got a crazy vert, so he'll have a highlight dunk every now and then. But it also makes him a good defender because he'll get like chase down blocks and stuff. Let's go check out DJ Augustine, who's probably the most awkward fit on this team. He's like this year's Eric Bledsoe. He's in George Hill's role, but he's like the polar opposite of George Hill. So George Hill last year was a very highly regarded, a big part of the bench unit. He shot 52% from the field, 46% from 3. So he was tailor-made for the Bucks system. And Augustine, he's not. Hill didn't need the ball in his hands to be effective, and Augustine does. Augustine's always been like an undersized, ball-dominant point guard, like a pick-and-roll scorer, runs the offense, always has a great AT ratio, more or less like a broke man's Chris Paul on offense. And none of that is what the Bucks need because, as mentioned before, they're running their offense through Giannis and Middleton, so they actually need guys who are like going to be in like be comfortable spotting up like a George Hill. Like Patrick Beverley would probably be the perfect point guard on this team, and this is not Augustine. So he's playing a role that's ill-suited to him, which means that his production is basically down across the board. He's having a career low assisting season. He's not really doing much on the ball, so I decreased his ball handle rating. His pass rating's down. His believe it or not, he actually drew lots of fouls, and he's at a career low rate for that. His free throw to field goal ratio is 7.17. So meaning for every, basically he's taking 1 free throw for every 5 field goal attempts, I think is the math on that. And that's which is not a good rate. And last year it was a career high 0.39. So I got to figure out a better way to say that. So 17% versus 39%, I guess, is how you would say. So he went from a career high in foul drawing to a career low. So I dropped him down to here. If that holds, that'll drop even further. But that's a pretty significant deal for a point guard. Basically, he's not. He isn't really attacking the rim with this team. They're just relying on him as a shooter, and that's not where like he's an okay catch and shoot guy, but he's not standout or anything. So kind of a questionable addition there. Wouldn't be surprised if he got traded later in the year. But Bryn Forbes, I've got him at a 76. Oh, so I'm sorry. So actually, and Augustine, I have him +3 from where 2K's got him at. As even like I'm still giving him credit for like last year, like the last couple years, and I just feel like at some point he should bounce back because he is better than what his statistics reflect. Check back in 10 games, that might change. But going over to Bryn Forbes, I've got him at a +2, just kind of whatever. Like I think my average player is always going to be 2 points higher than what 2K's got them at, just based on how I evaluate certain ratings differently than them. So +2, that's about that's average. Um, as I mentioned before, Basketball Reference records him as a point guard, but he has a 1.5 assist percentage, which is 2 assists in 172 minutes for those keeping track at home. In terms of like the possessions and everything, that's obviously not a point guard. Uh, he's basically in Kyle Korver's role, which is not ideal. He's just 6'2", Kyle Korver. They do the same thing, but he's not like he ain't a good defensive player. He, if anything, like you can't really play him in the playoffs. They're really hoping that Torrey Craig is able to develop a consistent 3-point shot. The moment that happens, Forbes will be a done deal. Like he's too situational, and he's not going to kill you in the regular season, but come playoff time, he'll probably get exposed and not be able to play a big role. Also worth noting, like he's only 6'2" and not a good defensive player. And like the other backup guard they have is DJ Augustine. Last year they didn't really have that problem. They had George Hill and Di Vincenzo coming off the bench, so they had guys with size and good defenders. And Augustine, they're bringing him in super early in the game because they need to stagger him with against Bryn Forbes. They can't have these two guys in the same lineup. So Augustine will come in early for Di Vincenzo, which will shift Holiday to the 2. And then when Holiday subs out, it's basically Forbes coming in with Di Vincenzo again. And Di Vincenzo is the point guard in that lineup, which is probably like not ideal. He's that's he should be a secondary playmaker, not a primary. Even discounting like the fact that they have Giannis and Middleton doing a lot of the playmaking on this team, it's just it's suboptimal, we'll say. So Torrey Craig, I'll cover Awara in a second, but Torrey Craig, he'll again, it's going to be tough for him to get on the court as long as he is a mediocre 3-point shooter at best. If he can fix that, he's ahead of Forbes on the depth chart. I moved him to the 2, even though I think 2 years ago he was the starting 2 for Denver, and then last year he got most of his minutes to the 3. He's got the size of a 3, and obviously he doesn't create his shot off the dribble at all. So like offensively he's a 3, but I think he's defending 2s at the moment because I checked his lineup data and it basically checks out that he really only been playing the 2 for the most part so far. He only played 2 games due to a broken nose, so he's currently sidelined. But yeah, he's kind of like a hybrid. He's the 3rd string at both spots for the most part. More or less took Sterling Brown's role with the team. And I think on paper, Craig is better, but he just needs to... Sterling Brown had the same problem, like not a great shooter. So Jordan Awara, he's played well in his limited minutes. He's only played like 69 minutes, I think, mostly in garbage time, but he's been effective in them. He's scoring 25 points per 36 minutes, and, which is obviously not going to hold up in playing with the regular guys, but just reflects that he is a scoring option, and that could come up if Middleton ever has to miss time. And DJ Wilson, it looked like he was going to play more, but then at the start of the year, but since then, like Thanasis has taken his playing time, so he's basically the 3rd string at power forward and center. Pretty disappointing career overall. You know, they drafted him 17th, and he really hasn't been able to get very much playing time. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Probably won't be back with the team or even in the NBA. Probably looking at Europe after this. But Thanasis, he barely played this year, and he's already almost eclipsed his playing time from last year. He played 135 minutes combined before the season. He's up to 109 on the year, so keep an eye on him there. He hit his first career three, so he's now a Ben Simmons-esque 1 of 16 from the field. And worth noting that last year I had him at like point guard, shooting guard. He was a primary ball handler with the team last year in like garbage time, so he's just a very versatile player. He can basically play 1 through 4. Right now he's playing 4 minutes for the team. They don't really need him as to fill a ball handler role with Sam Merrill around. So I've increased his ball handle rating just based on last year a little bit. I think 2K's got him at a 60. I have his defensive ratings up. But really, the one thing that holds him back as a pro at the moment is his three-point shot. As I mentioned, he's 1 of 16. So he ain't going to fill the Jay Crowder role unless he can fix that part of his game. Otherwise, he's really just a end of the rotation kind of guy. Sam Merrill, he has a 67 overall rating in the 2K roster, which is a joke. I am at 72 plus 5. He's a 4-year college player, and as I've previously mentioned in other videos, those guys are playing well this year because there was a short layover between the draft and there was no summer league, and an abbreviated training camp. All the guys with the most experience obviously are going to have less issue transitioning than somebody who only did like 1 year of college or whatever. So he's basically, even though he's 6'5", he's the third string point guard on this team. And again, noting because he's 6'5", Basketball Reference doesn't have him tagged as like a point guard, so they're counting him as a 2 guard in those minutes, which is again usually next to like Bryn Forbes. So Bryn Forbes is logging point guard minutes there in their system. So just something to keep in mind. And finishing off, we got Jalen Adams and Mamadi Diak. I think they misspelled his name, actually. Yeah, it's Diakite. Oh my God. Somebody mentioned this to me, and I noted it, but forgot to change it on my end. D-A-I. They don't have his name in the system either, right? Oh no, L-O. What a fucking joke, man. This stupid ass company. That's so embarrassing. Okay. I wonder if they fixed that in the. I didn't notice if they fixed that in the regular roster. I guess we'll check that in a second. But anyway, the two-way guys. The Bucks played. Those guys are barely going to play this year. The Bucks barely used their two-way contract players last year, so it's just like an organization thing. Frank Mason III was like the MVP of the G League, and he only played 118 minutes. Cam Reynolds was the other two-way last year. He didn't play a single minute. I think he was the only two-way player that never got into a game for their club. So Adams and Diakite, they've combined for 1 minute through 10 games. So clearly that has not changed from an organizational perspective. So we don't really need to worry too much about their ratings or anything this year. I highly doubt those are going to matter. So let's head back to the 2K roster as I save my progress with that name change. We're going to talk tendencies. Okay, but first, yeah, it's only a month, guys. Like, what a fucking joke. There's no way this is just the 82 mid-range for Giannis. That ain't the problem. This is all semantics. You know, having incorrect biographical information, that's a problem. Also, his player age. He ain't 25. He just came out of school. He's he's 23. They have him. They have his birth year is 1995. It's supposed to be 1997. You know, get your head in the game, guys. Like, this is the biographical information is that doesn't change. You know, it's established. That's stuff that you need to get right. Player names, bio data. Like, you just look foolish. But anyway, let's look at tendencies real quick. So we're gonna look at. I got a couple categories that we can focus on. So shot tendency. Okay, so we got Awara up here with an 80. Okay, Sam Merrill with a 70, and then Diatk with a 20. Okay, so this is weird to me because Awara and Merrill are basically rated off, like, directly off of their college production here, which obviously these guys are both second round picks. They were going to have a decrease in role jumping from the from amateurs to the pros. So in general, for when I'm doing tendencies for you know, rookies and stuff, when I'm looking at their college production, I typically always just figure out what their shot tendency would normally be in college, and then just subtract like 20 or 30 points. You know, like, there's no. These guys are role players at the NBA level, so I don't get it. And then Diafkit, him being 20 is also weird because he was actually a, like, kind of a inside scorer in college also. I think they just copy and pasted. It was just a bad copy and paste. Like, 20 shot tendencies, like Tyson Chandler low, or like PJ Tucker low. This is so that doesn't make any sense. So that's just a note that I have off the shot tendency. The shot tendency doesn't affect the gameplay. It is basically used by the simulation engine for my league, whereas the touch tendency is effectively the shot tendency for the gameplay. So we're going to go over and check out the touch tendency real quick and see how that differs. So we see Awara here has a 60 versus the 80 shot tendency. And we see Merrill has a 60 versus, I think it was a 70-something. And then Diatka is a 25 rather than, you know, so let's sort by touch just to get kind of an idea. So these guys are fine, touch tendency wise. So the and him again, bad copy paste job. Like, realistically, he should have like a 50, just to be in line with like DJ Wilson. I think DJ Wilson's a pretty accurate comp for Diatke, Diakite. So I just want to touch on this real quick. The people so there are multiple people that work on the tendencies for this game. The people that work on 2K on the My League end, the people that those are the ones who are responsible for the all the simulation engine stuff, which is close shot, mid-range shot, three-point shot, like all that stuff is used by the sim engine. So it actually doesn't surprise me that these are out of whack, because whereas the touch tendencies are fine, because it just indicates that there's two different people working on this, and one of them was paying more attention than the other. So I just wanted to that's something that stands out to me just from looking over this data. I don't know for a fact that the person that the person that works on the touch tendency isn't also working on the shot tendency, but I don't know. All right, so let's look at the three-point tendency real quick. Okay. So for the most part, everybody's threes are kind of up a little bit. This is probably just the entire league is probably up a little bit. DJ Augustine, as we mentioned, was really more of like a mid-range scorer. We see he's got a 31 shot mid. Oh no, sorry, that's shot mid range, right? But okay, 18 mid range versus which is high on the team. We're gonna look at the 3-point first though. But basically, he's not taking mid range shots at all. Mid range shots in the Bucks are unless your name is Giannis or Middleton, you don't get to take them. So if you join the team and you were a mid range shooter, all those shots basically become threes. So Augustine's 3-point tendency is up. Diakite, again, the bad copy paste job. He took 55 threes in college, which is 2 per game. Like you could boost that by like 10 points, I think, to at least make him functional. And it like one again, this is used by like the sim engine, whereas like this spot up three tendency is used by the gameplay. This is like to make sure that the player actually like spots up like from 3 to even get in position to take this shot to begin with. So at least doing that, and the AI I believe does use the mid range and the 3-point tendencies a little bit, but like it doesn't use the shot tendency at all by comparison. But yeah, that's my only notes for that. Let's look at spot up 3-point since we just talked about that. So we have a couple guys. We see here DJ Wilson with the 68 3-point, but very low spot up 3-point. So he's not going to take as many threes as he should be because he's not getting the spot to do that. Let's actually sort by this so we can get a pretty good idea. So like Thanasis stands out right here is he's not a 3-point shooter at all, but they have him doing that for whatever reason. That's gonna break the offensive flow a lot with him. Oh, 84 off-screen 3 tendency? No, like come on, dude, watch some tape. I don't know. Either watch some tape or just I don't know. Look at the stat. You know, these two numbers should be pretty closely tied together, if you ask me. Bryn Forbes, definitely probably max him out. The way this tendency was kind of explained to me by one of the developers when they reworked it is like 75 is, I think it's either 70 or 75. 75 I think is kind of the 75 is a benchmark for a lot of players, which is why you'll see most shooters will have a 75 or better, and then at 99 they get like a slight boost beyond 99, which I think is similar to how like some of the attributes work, which is why they don't give out 99s in attributes. So like a 99 for like the 3-point rating is actually like 109 in terms of like how it actually functions in the gameplay. Like they just give like that extra little boost to push it ahead, which I think is silly because you have badges to do that. So it's like, what's the point really? Like badges are how like ratings in general. This is a whole separate argument. But so if you really want somebody to spot up, you just basically want to max that out. So Brent Forbes, you know, really this is all he does is shoot threes. So yeah, he should be maxed out. Whereas Middleton will sometimes take somebody off the dribble or something. Like it's not a guarantee that he's going to shoot necessarily. Ditto for like Drew Holiday, for example. Some of the guys down here, like Connaughton and stuff, like they're not volume shooters, but because they're not really driving all that much, I don't have a problem with them like having a high tendency. Like if you look at Connaughton with his 44 and 75 versus Thanasis with 24 and 90, like this ratio right here just straight up should not exist in the game. So that's something they should clean up. And yeah, Wilson being low is a bit of a problem because he's a spot up guy. Like it's not like Giannis, who actually takes a lot of threes off the dribble. He takes a lot of pull-up threes and stuff like that. And Sam Merrill probably could go up a little bit. He's another guy who he's a poor man's Luka Doncic, so he does a lot off the dribble compared to like in spot up situations. But anywho, that's enough on that one. As mentioned, with the mid range, anybody who just joined the team is going to be tops on the team in mid range tendency. So that's something that needs to be adjusted. Like Augustine, Bryn Forbes, Bobby Portis, they're not getting this volume of mid range shots on the team. So, you could probably drop all of them by 10 points or more, depending on what the sample looks like. I didn't crunch the numbers on it, so don't take my entire word for it, but otherwise everybody else for the most part looks fine. I think having somebody told me that you need high spot up mid range in order for space, like for the players to be like effectively spaced in this game. I think that's a bunch of horseshit, to be honest, as I've reduced most of these to 0 in my game, and I have not noticed a difference at all. As we all know, players barely shoot mid-range shots in real life anymore. This is a relic of like the 1990s. Like power forwards like Charles Oakley and AC Green would spot up for mid-range. Like there's no wing in the NBA or guard or anybody under the like 6'10" who's spotting up from mid-range anymore. So I mean, you just tank all of those. But let's check out the dunks. We did talk a little bit about Giannis before. So let's actually look at his alley-oops. So his alley-oop tendency, that's high, believe it or not. He only had 25 alley-oops last year because he's on the ball so much. His alley-oop rate is identical to Brook Lopez, who's obviously like they couldn't be any different athletically, right? But that's just that is what it is. And if anything, it's you would want to have that lower so that Giannis in general is like catching the ball and the block and the post and stuff like that. Like rather than all right. And driving dunk. 2 years ago, he dunked 25% of his field goal attempts. Last year, that was 17%, and this year so far, the number's down to 13%, which is he's dunked 22 times in 10 games. So like, he doesn't need a max tendency. Like this isn't his peak. He's not the peak dunker that he was anymore. That doesn't mean like maybe still an 80, but there needs to be a difference between like peak athletic Giannis and slightly less than peak. 2K has this bad habit of like they'll put a guy at like 99, like Steph Curry will be at a 99 3-point rating until the day that he dies, regardless of how he's actually performing. And I have a feeling that Giannis's dunk rating and tendencies and all that will, he'll still have these probably 10 years from now when he's 35, Let's check out play discipline, which is basically the freelance tendency. There's a reason it is sandwiched between the post-up and the isolation tendencies. So I typically look at the difference between ISO and post is usually where I'll have my play discipline at. So we'll just sort by, we'll start from the bottom. Basically, the star players are the ones you would want to have the lowest play discipline as play. That basically means that they'll break off from a play and like do their own thing or look for their offense. So you would want that from Giannis. I don't know if Middleton should be a 10 by any stretch, but I definitely also wouldn't go much lower than like a 30 either. But we see Tendencies is a 2. I don't know who the fuck they copy pasted to get his to get this, but that's ridiculous. Clearly a post player or something, because post aggressive back down 55 versus like 5 for Giannis. Okay, sure, buddy. So Tendencies, his ratings, tendencies, everything just needs a complete rework. But going across the list, does anybody stand out? Okay, Bobby Portis. Torrey Craig is like an example of a player that would be a 99 in this, because he doesn't. He's not a one-on-one guy. He's never going to break off from a play to get his own. strictly role player. Bobby Portis, he's a guy that he's a little selfish. He breaks off. He looks for his own offense. So you can see that he's got the post up tendency and he ISOs a little bit. I'd probably recommend like a 70 or something. Offhand, like in the same territory as Brook Lopez, probably I'd put Bobby Portis, and probably Sam Merrill doesn't need to be a 99. Like I would say guys like who get their own offense sometimes, like they're not strictly role players like a Kyle Korver or a Bryn Forbes or a Torrey Craig, like just make them like a 90 so they do it just a little bit, And finally, let's look at finish and dish, wherever the hell it is. Okay. Finish, aka attack strong, and dish. So just one more thing to touch on is like the dish to open man tendency. The primary playmakers on this team, if you load up a computer game with the Bucks or whatever, Giannis and Middleton are the primary distributors on this team. Giannis is supposed to be able to get like X amount of assists a game, and that just doesn't happen when he attacks the rim so hard like a fucking broken ass video game character. He's spamming the rim too hard compared to what he actually does in real life. In real life, they're looking for he's actively kicking out 2 3-point shooters. That's part of what makes the Bucks so good, is that it isn't just Giannis spamming for like 50 points on ridiculous shooting. They're getting a lot of threes. So that stands out as this is low. Probably drop is finished like an 80-80 split. Might be fine offhand. Middleton's attack strong is probably low also, because he does finish. He does attack the rim, I guess you could say. Like I would say like a 50, but then also boost his dish a reasonable amount also. Maybe like 20 points on each of these categories. And Drew Holiday also like should have a higher dish tendency. I think his finish is fine, but I think most of the guards don't pass enough. Like the reason you don't have ball movement in the game is because like most players need a dish tendency higher than their finish tendency. I have a formula for how to generate that, but I'm not gonna break it down too much here. But yeah, that's just something that if you want to get more realistic gameplay out of the Bucks, you definitely need to have Giannis and Middleton and Holiday, the primary passers on the team, actually pass the ball. That would be ideal, right? But anyway, that wraps up this team review for the Milwaukee Bucks. Hope you enjoyed this content. Going to be throwing out probably a couple more team reviews as I figure out what I'm doing content-wise. And yeah, it's been an interesting NBA season. Lots of players are dropping like flies right now, either from COVID or like season-ending injuries due to probably just due to not being able to get in shape in time due to the abbreviated training camp and stuff like that. It's a lot of things that we can look up or like figure out on the side, like the game within the game, in a sense. Why are things happening this season compared to past seasons? But anywho, thanks guys for watching, and be on the lookout for my next team review. Peace.